Hey sixth graders, this is lesson 8-3. We're continuing our conversations about data and statistics. And today we're going to be talking about making data groups equal, which has to do with finding the average. And the mathematical word for average is mean. So this lesson starts out by giving us a definition for the mean. It says the mean is a measure of the center for a set of numerical data. It summarizes all of its values with a single number. Use the three groups of cubes shown below for exercises 1 and 2. So here's some pictures. We've got 6 cubes on the left, 1 cube in the middle, and 5 cubes on the right. It says suppose 2 cubes are moved from the left group to the center group, and 2 cubes are moved from the right group to the center group. Will the groups be leveled out and represent fair shares? Well, let's try it. It says if 2 cubes are moved from the left group, so these would be gone, and we give them to the center group. And 2 cubes are moved from the right group, so these would be gone, and you would give them to the center group. Will the groups be leveled out and represent fair shares? Well, we would be left with 4, 5, and 3. Are those equal? No. 4, 5, and 3 are not equal. So that would not be creating fair shares. So number 2 says, we'll explain how we could level out the 3 groups so that each group represents a fair share. Use the words add and subtract in your answer, and then sketch the fair shares in the space at the right. Okay, well, I think instead of taking taking 2 from the group on the right, we should have only taken 1, and I think that would have fixed it. So I'm going to say we could use the words add and subtract. We could subtract 2 from the left group, so if I draw that, it started like this, taking 2 from the left group and add them to the center group. Okay, so the center group started with 1, but we're going to take these ones away and give them to the center group. And we can subtract. Instead of taking 2 away, let's just take 1 away. So then subtract 1 from the right group. So the right group started with 5, and we're taking 1, and we're going to add it to the center group. So this goes away, and we add it to the center group. Now, are they all equal? Well, my group on the left is left with 1, 2, 3, 4. My group in the middle is left with 4, and my group on the right is left with 4. So basically, what we just did is we distributed the blocks so they all have the same amount now. So what we could say is that the mean, or the average, is 4, okay? So the first pile started with 6, the second pile started with 1, the third pile started with 5. But if we tried to share all those blocks so it was equal for everyone, we would say in math, the mean, or the average, was that they all had 4, okay? Now, none of them actually started with 4. This group started with 6 and then 1 and then 5, but the average, if you shared them all equally, they would all end up with 4 when you're done. Okay, so next it says, 8 students took a 10-question quiz. The number of correct answers each student scored is shown in the table at the right. Use the table for exercises 3 and 4. So what's the quotient when the sum of the scores is divided by the number of scores? So this is basically telling you how to find the mean. Okay, so step 1 is find the sum, which basically means add all the data points. Okay, and then step 2 is divide that sum by the number of data points. And that's exactly what we did here with the blocks. You might not have realized it, but we took all those blocks, and there happened to be 12. Not 4. We started with 6 plus 1 more is 7 plus 5 more is 12. So if we added all those data points together, we found the sum, we got 12. And then you divide that sum by the number of data points. Well, there were 3 different groups, 3 different data points. So if you take 12 divided by 3, you get 4. Okay? So basically you're trying to share everything equally with how many groups there are. So that's what we're going to do here. What's the quotient when the sum of the scores is divided by the number of the scores? So that means find the sum. So we're going to add all of these together. And in order for us to do that, let's start adding. So 6 plus 7 more. I'm going to keep track kind of on the side here. 6 plus 7 more is going to give me 13. 13 plus 8 more is 21. 21 plus 9 more is 30. 30 plus 5 more is 35. 35 plus 8 more is 43. 43 plus 6 more is 49. And then 49 plus 7 more is 56. Okay, so my total was 56. But then it says, what's the quotient when the sum of the scores is divided by the number of scores? So now we need to divide by how many scores there were. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, so our quotient is 56 divided by 8, which we know is 7. Okay, so what is the mean of the data table? And explain. So we can say the mean is the sum of the scores divided by the number of scores. Okay, so in this case, the sum of the scores was 56. We divided it by the number of scores. There were 8 of them. And the answer is 56 divided by 8 is 7. Okay? So basically it's what we set up here. First you find the sum of all of them, which was 56. Then you divide that answer by the number of data points that you had. And since there are 8 different things here, we divided that by 8, and we got the total of 7. Or not the total, the quotient of 7. So that means that the average quiz score was 7. Some kids got 5, some got 6, some got 7, 8, or 9, but the average score, the mean score, was 7. All right, so here's Puzzled Penguin. He says, "Dear math students, I was asked to find the mean of the numbers 3 and 6. I know that finding the mean is the same as rearranging the cubes so that there are the same number of cubes in each group. When I rearrange the cubes, there are too many cubes to make 2 groups of 4 and not enough cubes to make 2 groups of 5. So I don't think there is a mean for the numbers 3 and 6. Am I correct? No. Can always start with no because he's always wrong, right? But what he's saying is on the mean, he knows that you want these blocks piles to be equal. So he's saying one way to do it is to take your 3 and your 6. He's saying if I take 1 away and give it to this guy, now it's 4 I didn't really show that very well. Sorry. He gave it to this guy. Now there's 4 over here and 5 over here. So he's saying those aren't equal. So he said, well, that didn't work, so let me try it another way. If I start with 3 and 6, he said, well, what if I take 2 away? If I take 2 away and then give them over here, I end up with 5 and 4. So he said, no matter what I do, I can't get my piles to be equal, so there's not a mean. So he said, oh, well, there's not a mean, there's not an average. I can't get the piles to be equal. No, that's not true, Puzzle Penguin. If you use numbers instead of blocks, you get 4 and a half, which should make sense because if no matter what you do, you get 4 or 5, or if you get 5 or 4, what's in the middle of those? 4 and a half. Let's prove it. We know that with the mean, you can also add everything together. So 3 plus 6 equals 9. So first you add, you find the sum, okay? We get 9. And then you divide by how many data points there were. And there were 2 data points because there was a data point of 3 and a data point of 6. So we could say 9 divided by 2 because we divide that sum by how many data points there were. And 9 divided by 2 is 4 and a half. So our final answer is 4 and a half. So there is a mean. It's just difficult to show it with blocks in this case. All right, number 6, which is also our last question for today. Says, dear math students, I was asked to find the mean of the numbers 12, 1, and 2. When I used addition and division to calculate the mean, my work produced an answer of 5, which didn't seem right because the set of numbers doesn't contain a number 5. Then I calculated the mean a second time, and again my answer was 5. Can you explain what I did wrong? Your friend, Puzzled Penguin. Well, what I really like about this question is for once, Puzzled Penguin did not do his math wrong. He just thought he did it wrong, okay? So first you find the sum, and you have to add. Our numbers are 12, 1, and 2. That's what Puzzle Penguin did. He added 12 plus 1 plus 2, and we get 15. Then when you find the mean, or when you find the average, you have to divide. And you divide your sum, which was 15, by how many data points you had. And there's 1, 2, 3 data points. And 15 divided by 3 is 5. So he did not do it wrong. He thought he did it wrong because if the numbers are 12 and 1 and 2, he's wondering, well, how is it possible to have an average of 5 when 5 isn't even one of those numbers? But you don't have to have an average that's one of your numbers. When you find the average or when you find the mean of something, it's just meaning that if you take all of those and you put them together and then you share them equally with each different data point, what do you get? And in this case, you would get 5. So it's okay that 5 was not one of the original numbers. Well, that's it for today's lesson, you guys. Nice and short. So we'll catch you tomorrow for our next lesson that is going to be about more data.